Welcome to this webinar. It's a bit of an adventure for us, not having done this before.
Kia ora, my name is Tuhono Korero from Ngāti Porou. I work here at UCOL, the Universal College of Learning in Palmerston North. My position here is Director of Māori Pacific Education here at UCOL. Suzanne and I were responsible for our Pute Arapiki project from 2010, and our little project was called Tuhono Korero, which basically means connecting conversations. Kia ora, it's good to get to know you guys.
Last year, when we started this project, I was here at UCOL in a 20-hour position as the student coach, which meant that I was involved in psychosocial contact with students rather than academic contact with students. And I had some time to spare, and I asked if I could assist with this project. And this year, I'm in the position of leader of student success, so my role has changed quite considerably. But we are basing this on what happened last year. And there's no doubt that my role this year has been part of what we did last year, the change in my role.
Can I just quickly background the kaupapa of Tuhono Korero? We just chose that simple title, as I said before, because it means connecting conversations. Our sole purpose, really, we have, in terms of our project or our kaupapa, we had nothing flash. This wasn't about being flash about anything. We don't believe that we had any new earth-shattering piece of knowledge that we wanted to share with everybody. Our approach was basically back to basics. What we wanted to focus on, even though it's related to numeracy and literacy, which the Pute or the fund is based on, what we wanted to focus on for our project was trying to improve the conversation and the engagement between our kaiako on certain programs here and the students that they are teaching. That was really the focus of Tuhono Korero.
TEC and the Pute Arapiki project gave us the ability to be creative. They did say to us, you can move outside of the normal expectations of TEC projects. And so when we sat and discussed what the issues were, it came down to Māori at UCOL desperately needing a sense of belonging. Before we could even consider literacy and numeracy in the academic forum, we actually had to improve literacy for the cultural context for Māori students. And so from that position, we started looking at, well, what do we actually need to put in place? And clearly, to offer staff development was the most important part of the project. I'm just putting up some things now.
Now, just a quick plug for tech, because this was a little bit experimental for them, and I made sure to suss it out when we made our tono or our application to tech last year, because as Suzanne was suggesting, they gave us the ability with this fund here to do something that was what I consider not normal practice for tech, because we said to them, look, we want to do these things, but we don't want to have a focus on hard data. We don't want to have a focus on being able to furnish reports to tech because of what we've done. We chose a bit more of a Māori way, and we wanted to do things that were, as Suzanne was always like to say, we wanted to do things from the heart, so that we could try and get to our kaiako on a very, very personal basis. And this particular fund, Tuhono Korero, gave us the ability to do that. And so that's basically where it came from. And so we were going to use those basic tikanga Māori, as I said, most people know these basic things, and try and implement them into an institution to improve the way our kaiako engage with, think about, and communicate with our Māori students, and with all our students actually, because there was a ripple effect on this that we'll explain as we go along.
So we worked with putting together guest speakers that could assist staff to challenge their own position about Māori students, but also to increase their awareness of the need for manaakitanga within the organisation. And so we had a series of speakers that we invited, and I've just play around with this PowerPoint again, see if we can bring something up here. So we started with Russell Bishop, and the combination, I think, of Tātawhai being Māori and me being Pākehā was actually significant, because I was doing work with staff and I was listening to a lot of challenge and resistance from staff about the whole concept, and I was able to work with them in a non-threatening way. So it actually was a really good thing to do. So as I promoted guest speakers coming, and Russell Bishop coming, who was quite a well-known speaker, the staff were coming to terms with their own issues around this, and when they heard the speakers, they were able to actually listen with their own questions around it.
And so our purpose was to expose our teaching staff to a group of very skilled and experienced Māori educators, to challenge their thinking about what it was they do as teachers, and to challenge their thinking about how they regarded our learners. Because we do know, and literature does say this, that a learner's cultural background is oftentimes not appreciated in a large institution. And so the actual act of learning can be a bit difficult if the person who's doing the teaching can come from a different cultural background. Now, just to carry on with, get back onto one thing that Suzanne said, one of the most significant things about this, and I'll put a plug in for my mate here, about this whole project, was Suzanne herself. Suzanne, as a non-Māori, had great influence over our non-Māori staff, and I saw that as the project was going along. And it was done, not surprisingly, in a very, very informal way. Even though we had good technical communications right across the institution about our kaupapa and the things that are coming up, and having this presenter this particular week and somebody else next month, etc. I believe it was Suzanne's spade work behind the scenes in a very informal way with staff that created a real buzz and a real interest in the Tuhono Korero kaupapa. What I mean by that is that Suzanne had the ability to go behind the scenes and catch up with staff in any way she could. She was in a classroom, she saw a group of staff in the staff room, she saw someone walking in the atrium or something like that. Suzanne would latch onto them and tell them about Tuhono Korero, and that created a lot of interest in our kaupapa. And so I'll always be grateful for Suzanne and her influence, and for a lot of our Pākehā staff. They did comment that it was due a lot of it to her influence.
Well, after that, I'm not quite sure what to say. Thank you. We did bring people, some of our educators, from a practical perspective, so that staff could develop the skills in the classroom context. So they could get the wider philosophy as well as some practical skills. And Araha, Pitapu Dam and Tamati Waka presented beautifully, and a lot of staff were very grateful for what they offered. Also, Rawiri Smith came, and he was a very grounding speaker, and he talked about the Treaty of Waitangi from a Māori perspective, and he also talked about Manawatu and the name for the place in which UCOL was established. It was also a very a grounding experience, and people who had attended all these speakers were being moved and changed, and were making comments. And I had a lot of corridor conversations with people about the difference it was making to the way they were approaching their students in the classroom and with each other in meetings. And one of the exciting things was to sit at meetings and have the theorists quoted in terms of direction for students, particularly when it was coming from the administration area of the organisation.
Mm. If you have a look at the slide there, Te Ara Haere, capturing the hearts and minds. Capturing the hearts and minds was as I alluded to before, was a favourite saying, and I think Suzanne brought that up as a bit of a theme for our kaupapa here, Tuhono Korero. But further down the slide there, it talks about some of the approaches that we made, which were very practical. And apart from whakatauaki and the use of IT in terms of promoting our kaupapa, again on a more informal basis, which was really effective, was just kōrero tahi. And that was just basic informal kōrero with staff, no matter where they were, about who was, like I said before, who was coming to speak and what they spoke about. Underneath that one, the bullet point about backup staff tutorials. Let's say we had Russell Bishop one week, we had Charles Royal a couple of weeks later. We ran backup workshops just in case staff wanted to come in for a lunchtime and discuss some of the whakaaro or some of the ideas that they talked about, or if they had needed some sort of clarification of those sort of things. And we found those very, very effective. As I say there, we recorded staff and student interviews as well. The bottom one there, feedback on the run was quite effective too, because in a lot of things like this, you have to do very formal evaluations, they give feedback, etc. Nah, not us. We didn't do any of that stuff. We just went in where we found the staff who knew to be part of our workshops, whether they be the small ones or the big ones. We just had a kōrero to them very, very quickly and very, very informally, and asked them what did they think and how did this thing impact on you. Now, let me just change track slightly because I forgot to say one thing about Suzanne that I need to say. And she hates me talking like this, but I don't care. I said once I signed her up last year, I do things a little bit different. Now, Suzanne said to you, she's not Māori. But I must tell you this, one of the things that drove this project, which I just forgot to say before, was listening about her ihi and wana. Now, you don't just normally associate that with Pākehā staff, but ihi and wana, if you're not familiar with the Te Reo Māori, it means it basically means that passion for something, having that real passion for something. That's the general way that those two kupu are used. And I must say, in my Pākehā made here last year, boy, did I see some passion for this kaupapa of Tuhono Korero in terms of all the practical things that I was talking about. And it slightly miffs me to say that she probably had a bit more ihi and wana than a lot of my colleagues, my Māori colleagues here. But I keep going on about Suzanne because she was the real driver behind this. That's why I got her to do it.
Okay, so what we want to just sort of talk about now is where this has gone to, because the project, what it did was what I describe as oiling the wheels for what was to come next. Because this year we were lucky to engage five Māori staff, and who came into the organisation in that sort of psychosocial role, and they were able to just fall into those roles really easily. And because there'd been so much talk and acceptance from the Tuhono Korero project, the staff just were able to go through the organisation and make those contacts really easily. So it was not an intended outcome, but it was a very powerful outcome. And in terms of literacy and numeracy, it has had a huge impact. It's been a precursor for that, yes. A huge impact this year.
Yeah. And I support that. This quite unknowingly to us, I think, Tuhono Korero project from 2010 was the precursor to new things that UCOL was going to try this year around making all students feel a lot more welcome. And those staff have often said to us that we were, like Suzanne was saying, that our program last year and this year, or particularly last year, it was the prerequisite to what to what UCOL was trying to do, and it warmed them up into a new way of thinking about how to welcome and treat our students. You'll see on the slide here about ngā hua. They basically mean, well, what are the things that came out of Tuhono Korero? And there's 3 bullet points there. We watched our staff grow. Those staff who were regular attenders at our workshops and at our main presenters, we watched them grow. We watched them become comfortable with things Māori. And we also had them coming up to us and saying that they saw practical things there and heard that they were going to actually try out in their teaching environments. We had one of the deans come up to us after listening to Russell Bishop, and he said, you know what, I'm going to try 2 of these, get my staff to try 2 of these things in the classroom. Now, those are the outcomes that we wanted. Those are the outcomes that we wanted. That was the intention. And how do we know this? Simply because of what I said before. It was our ability to just kōrero informally with those staff members that had been part of the program. And they would tell us these things. So we were very happy with some of the outcomes. And as Susan has said, Tuhono Korero was a precursor for 2011. Everybody was getting into, those who were part of Tuhono Korero 210, they were getting into the groove, if you like, for what was to come in 2011.
Well, I'm really interested in your questions about what we have presented here today. We're just checking to see if there's something that we should have said.
I've called this, just very quickly, I've called this slide Tauira, meaning just a new beginning, and just something that I've applied here to UCOL. When we talked about Tuhono Korero being a precursor for 2011, these 5 bullet points here were the things, the new things that UCOL was trying in an attempt to engage better with students to hopefully increase retentions and program completions. So we'll often find that there was a new admissions process put in place where students, a lot of students, a lot more than in the past, they came in prior to the course starting to have kōrero or conversations so that we got to know them better. And particularly whether we felt that they were suited for a particular program or did they need to go on to another program. A lot of the programs started instituting welcome sessions, totally unheard of in big institutions. But we did that this year. And the attendance from students and the feedback from them was overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. Yeah. They might have been afternoon sessions, they might have been night sessions, they might have been during the day. And so bullet point 3 goes into that. It was about showing greater manaakitanga for all students. And it became a popular word even with our non-Māori staff, this thing about manaaki, the ability to look after, right? The other bullet point, Project Transform. And then the Raukura Success Program. The Raukura Program was what Suzanne said just before. We managed to get some funding to initiate and implement a new support program for Māori staff, which I had wanted to put in place for quite a while. It was simply a more focused level of support and a support initiative that I knew through experience would get a greater positive response from our Māori students. Now that's been in place since March this year, and it's done really, really well. Suzanne was going to say something about quite a popular little kōrero that came from Russell Bishop and was well known within our institution. In fact, it's become well known nationally.
Russell Bishop quoted, "What's good for Māori is good for non-Māori. What's good for non-Māori is not necessarily good for Māori," and that was. It's a very powerful statement, and it has been integrated throughout the organisation. It's been the one line that everybody has hooked onto, and because of that, the projects are far more welcoming and available to students. The support has increased for students, all students. So it's been a very positive effect.
Just going to the next slide. I think this is the last slide. Now, basically talking about very briefly about, what were some of the main things about this project? What were some of the key things, if you like? And I've talked about Suzanne. Hey, I talked about Suzanne. She's telling me to keep quiet, very quietly, and kicking me under the table. Don't do that, Suzanne. Now, the 2 bullet points at the top there, tangata tino ihi and wana. I'm talking about Suzanne there, I mentioned that before. tangata ngā kaunui ki te tangata. Now, that's what we were trying to do through Tuhono Korero with our teaching staff and other staff, is to teach them to be tangata ngā kaunui ki te tangata. A lot more compassionate and helpful to people and particularly our students generally. Again, I can't underestimate the value of the things that we did informally. I think if we were in a corporation and we had to do things very process-wise, we would have got the sack. We didn't do that. We did things very, very in a very, very easy manner. Our approach, a very, very informal approach, as I said, and I believe because of those relationships set up basically by Suzanne again, and then by myself, I believe through this approach of being on the ground at the grassroots with our staff and students, that we reap some big rewards.
Okay, thank you. We do have a question here. I'll show you if she has any questions. Okay.
Can I just do this? Maybe we can just repeat it the last slide. Let me just, sorry, that was the second last slide. Give me 30 seconds to do the last slide.
Oh, there we go.
This is the last slide, I promise. Hei kōkiri whakamua basically means, you know, doing the business. Hikoi te hikoi, it says. Just walk in the talk and walk in the walk. Tuhono Korero and its kaupapa, the Puti allowed us to carry on the kaupapa into 2011, and that's what we've been doing this year. We had 2 more big speakers this year. We had 1 or 2 smaller workshops again this year, and we're going to produce a very simple staff handbook or guidebook for staff about things Māori, and that's going to be done on 3 campus spaces, so it's got input from 3 different iwi. And that is just a guidebook just to let people know or to teach them about the basic things. And it could be something like pūwhiri, it could be something like koha, or it could be something like the region over in Whanganui. Who's the mountain there for Tāti Haunui a Paparangi? Who's their river? Who's their tupuna, etc., etc. It's those sort of basic things. We're in the midst of producing this handbook for them, and that's come out of the project. So everything we're trying to continue, even though the money is running out, we're still trying to continue to maintain those connections of Tuhono Korero and try to keep it going.
Thank you for your questions, Riva. The first question you hear is, do you see future funding to ensure the providers are able to do this mahi? I think that for us at this stage, and Tāwhai really needs to answer this, I think it is essential that things are continued, and they can be quite simple and without funding required. Things like, through our organisation we have an intranet system, and we can send an iCall with whakatauki. So that can be a proverb of the day, or a message that can promote positive spirit towards all students, but also the staff find that quite useful, that they can put a whakatauki at the top of their whiteboard that's relative to what they are teaching that day, and they can actually just tick along with some of that those messages of inclusion and acceptance in the classroom. So sometimes it doesn't need to cost a lot of money what we can do. What we have started here is important. We do need to continue to bring in speakers, and that will involve funding.
The thing is, under this manaakitanga, we've managed to embed into programs, into faculties, into some of the schools, the things that need to be done, because they've seen the advantage of doing these things under this kupu or whakaaro called manaaki, and so they are assisting us to just naturally try and keep it going. And in terms of Pūtea, we expect them to fund it, and that's what a lot of them have been doing this year.
Your other question here about are there situations and attitudes that are still being resolved? There will always be situations and attitudes that need to be resolved. But what is happening when the philosophy of the organisation changes and is more inclusive, the new staff, as they come into the organisation, have a much more positive attitude. And so it will be worked through, I totally believe. And now that the Rokura staff are throughout the organisation, there is a far more easy access to things Māori, and there's a comfort level where lecturers can ask questions about how to approach a situation, which in the past they would just do their way because it was easier. So there are, there will always be situations and attitudes, but they are manageable now in a way that they became offensive in the past.
At least better than in the past. Remember, we're a big mainstream organisation, and we're never going to capture every individual teaching staff here. But the progress and the steps we made last year were quite significant, and we continue with those with the whakawhanaungatanga, or those relationships. And we saw staff probably that we never ever thought would start noticing things like this, and they're still trying to do those things. And as Suzanne said, with the new Rokura team on board, who are at the coalface, they're not in an office somewhere. And this is the new support system that I developed last year. Like Suzanne was saying, because they're exposed to particular programs in schools, and they are part of their program in the school, they have some real influence over teachers in front of the classrooms, and that's been a real positive. They are actually kai tuhutohu. They give the teachers a lot of guidance and a lot of information about things Māori. That we know, according to what Russell Bishop says, can have some real influence on non-Māori students as well.
Oh, thank you, Fran. I noticed that was your question that I just answered. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else you'd like us to share. I mean, obviously we have so many stories that we could tell, and some exciting things. And I think one of the things that's just popped into mind there is when staff realise that some of the things that they do are culturally inclusive, they get a sense of excitement about that, and they're far more likely to continue it. And so there was a lot of affirmation about the good things that were happening here. And being from a strengths-based position as a practitioner, I really worked hard with those things that people were doing well, rather than the things that people were not doing.
One of the uncanny things that we kind of noticed here at UCOL in the last couple of years, and it's our Pākehā colleagues that have been telling us, is that when we had a support focus on the Māori students in particular programs, and one of the particular programs we supported last year was the year one of our sports science degree, which has always had a high attraction for Māori students, for obvious reasons. And we picked on the cohort of Māori students in there, and we gave them some real support. And eventually, the program leader and the staff were saying that they believe because of that initiative, everybody else in year one picked up their game. And so that's one of the uncanny but unforeseen but very, very good outcomes that we need. If Māori students can do well in a class, in a program, it can pick up the game of anybody.
Okay, thank you both. I can see that you've logged out. You might have already gone. So, kia ora kōrero, thank you.
Ai, ngā mihi kia koutou, mō koutou e whakarongo atu kia mātou nei, ko taku hoa ko Suzanne. Tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa. Nō reira, mā te runga rawa koutou e tiaki manaki e hāpai me te hunga Māori aha pō kai hea, kō wai, nō hea. Nō reira, o tira, tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou.